This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I recap the game. We talk about my sadness and frustration, but we also talk about what Ohio State has looking forward to in the future, and we break down all of the games coming up for Conference Championship Week and what the final rankings might look like. All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. I'm Ben, that's Josh, and yes, I'm still semi-sad.
In denial?
And denial and unnerving. We'll obviously get into the game that happened this past weekend and how I believe that it was a closer game than, for some reason, a lot of media people think that Michigan ran away with it. And so on. We'll get into all that here in a bit. But Josh, how's been your last few days? How's work going? How's life? Is it still freezing cold like it is here over there in Ohio?
Yeah, Cleveland, over an hour away, got like 5 or 6 inches of snow yesterday. We just been dealing with cold, and we got like maybe a half inch. Like the grass is coated, but that's how Ohio weather.
How was your
right
Thanksgiving,
now.
by the way? That's another thing. How was your Thanksgiving?
Could have been better. We had to cancel some plans with some of our family because everybody got sick in ours on Thanksgiving. So we still had dinner, just us, but we didn't go and see like my cousins or anything like that. So
You didn't like poison them, did you? You're like, I just don't want to be with family this year. I'm
it
just gonna.
it might have come from one of my other brothers, and then they gave it to me, and then it just like went on.
Just like, yeah. And the
Yeah.
weird thing is, like here in Europe, is like COVID starting to come back again, which is just weird to think about because it feels like forever ago, but it's making a wave again here in Europe. So yippee ki-yay. But anyways, Josh, there is a big giant elephant in the room. I think we would both say. And I think Josh, because when I turned on the camera and when Josh connected onto the call, he was very, I think, shocked at my attire today.
I was just laughing because it's not only an Ohio State jersey after the game, but it's the 23 one too.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's my
I forgot
LeBron
you had
James
it.
one. Yeah, it's my LeBron James one, which I don't know how I still feel about it. Yeah. Do you want to start? Because you know that I'm going to have a lot to say. So I don't know if you want to start.
Yeah.
Give me your
So
recap of the game, how you thought throughout the game and so on.
yeah. So when we picked this game, we both picked Ohio State, and I picked Ohio State. It was going to be a
close one.
definitely a grind fest, 24-20. And
You were
to my
close.
Credit, Ohio State did get 24.
You were close.
But I missed 10 of Michigan's points. And
Yeah.
the game kind of went about how I thought it would. It just every single first down seemed like a struggle. But I'm going to go ahead and give credit to Michigan. I know you're going to talk a lot about what Ohio State didn't do, but I just want to give Michigan their flowers for coming out here, winning this game,
man.
the third time in a row, with an interim coach in this case, Sharon Moore, who came out swinging, as you could see by the 3 for 3 he was on fourth downs. It was just like anytime it was close, it's like, yeah, in this game, I feel like the team that gets more sixes than threes is going to go ahead and win this one. And we saw him get fourth downs, and that all those drives led to touchdowns eventually for Michigan. We also saw Michigan outdo Ohio State on the special teams. They didn't turn the ball over. Penalties on both sides. I'll give Ohio State credit. Just one penalty on their side, just 3 by Michigan. So Michigan handled all the small things, especially on that final drive where there was about 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and they killed 7 minutes and extended the lead to 6 there, forcing Ohio State to have to get a touchdown to win it. So I thought that Michigan handled business. J.J. McCarthy wasn't super involved in this game, but he was more involved than what I had anticipated based on how he was used against Penn State. He threw 20 passes in this game, connected on 16 of them. So super efficient, made some really nice throws like that one touchdown to Roman Wilson, just threaded the needle right through there. But Michigan did what they needed to do. Ohio State, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and let you talk about them mostly, but they were so close. I mean, I thought they were conservative. I thought that play at the end of the first half where they were 4th and 2, and Ryan Day decides to settle for a 52-yard field goal attempt when his kickers never made anything longer than like 45. It's like, why don't you, since you have timeouts, try to convert this, get closer. Maybe you still end up with a field goal, but it's a more manageable field goal.
Yeah.
And there were just situations like that where it's like, I heard Zach Smith say on Master Sports, Ryan Day called the game like Kyle McCord was his quarterback. So whether it was because Kyle just Ryan Day didn't have
He
faith
doesn't
in
have
him
the it
or he
factor.
didn't have the ability.
Doesn't have the it
It
factor.
just he wasn't cut out for this job. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you, Ben, and tell me what you saw. But I
Yeah.
just wanted to go ahead and give Michigan their credit and say what I thought was
Yeah.
lacking on
Yeah.
Ohio State's end.
Look, I'm not an Ohio State fan that's just gonna like be like a pouty, like screw Michigan. Like I'm not gonna give them credit. Like, no, I am. Like, Michigan came in and they did what they do best, which is manage a game. Right. Like, do I think Michigan is a better team on Saturday? Yeah, right. At home in a big game. Yeah, they were. If you look at the stats, if you look at the stats without the score, you would think Ohio State would have won this game, right? They
Well, I
won in
think
every
Ohio
set.
State did
They
finish
did
with what? More total
more
yards, more
more total
first
yards,
downs.
more
Like I
passing
said, less
yards,
penalties.
more
Yep.
passing yards, close to the same in rushing yards,
The
not too far off.
superstars like Donovan Edwards, I think, had 10 carries for 31 yards.
Yeah,
So under 4 yards a carry. Blake Corum, exactly 4 yards a
yeah.
carry, 22
And
carries,
like if
88
you would
yards.
have told me, hey, you're going to hold Michigan to 4 yards a carry, I would have been like, they got a really good shot at winning this game, right? And I'm going to say something that on the podcast they talked about this week was like Ryan Day called this game scared to make a mistake, and you would think it would be flipped, right? Like you would think Michigan would be more scared to do something wild, like right, they did a halfback pass, they went on fourth down 3 times. Like these are things that teams that have lost 2 in a row do, not teams that have won 2 in a row, right? You know it as well as I do. You've played sports, I've played sports. When you are in a winning streak, you tend to be more conservative. You don't want to kind of ruin that momentum. Whereas when you're down, you tend to like, hey, we're going to throw off everything we got. I felt that Michigan kept things like that QB run in the second half. I felt Michigan kept things that they did not run all year for Ohio State. Ohio State I felt had nothing that it's like they weren't saving anything. It's like they were okay with doing what they did all year. And again, I have no problem with that if you are executing it the way you should. Now, I'm going to say this. The one thing that did really tick me off about Michigan after the game was Roman Wilson came out and said Ohio State wasn't tough. I disagree with that. And I don't know about you. I disagree with that because Ohio State played toe to toe. By the way, ran the ball down Michigan's throats on that big drive to make it a 17-17 ball game. I mean, if you remember that, they literally ran 8 straight plays down Michigan's throats and said, we're going to do that. And then for some reason, Ryan Day decided not to run the ball ever again the rest of the game, which was mind-boggling to me. So yeah, it is interesting in that case. But yeah, and I'll get into details here about the game here in a second. But yeah, give me your thoughts on Roman Wilson saying that, because I get it last year. I get it the year before. Yeah, Ohio State was not really physically ready. But I felt like the defense, like you said, only gave up 4 yards a carry. I felt, the pass rushers were there. But other than that, I felt maybe that last drive, you could say that. But even then, like they were, Ohio State's a bend to don't break defense. All game, I felt like Michigan was giving up still similar plays. Yeah, they made the final plays that mattered. But really, if you look across the game.
Yeah, like you said, and I had mentioned on that final drive, Michigan definitely forced their will on Ohio State there, killing 7 minutes on the clock there. And I've seen some clips like Rod Moore kind of manhandled, I think it was Fryer on Ohio State's offensive line.
No,
It's
it
like
was
this is a
Simpson. It was
safety.
Simmons. It was Simmons
Simmons,
because he
okay.
sucks.
Yeah, like a safety on a tackle, just like shedding a block like that. It's like I don't know how many other plays were in there that like that, but I don't know if Michigan, you could say, was the tougher team in the day, but it's not like Ohio State was just weak. It was just kind of like an inches thing, maybe. You know what I mean?
And a couple of the things that you brought up that I want to talk about is especially that last play. That dude, you should have saw me in this, and I was sitting right here on this couch behind me, and I was like, my jaw dropped. I've never seen Ryan Day so passive. Like my whole life watching him coach for Ohio State, I've seen him go on 4th and 2 with less time remaining than what he had. Like it was mind-boggling to me. It's like, dude, okay, what's the worst happens? You throw an extra pass, it gets intercepted, half's over. Or you get down close to the end zone, you end up, missing an opportunity for a touchdown, the time expires. Dude, there is nothing worse than going away with 0 points. So why force a 52-yard field goal when you have 37 seconds left? You at least get one more play, maybe 2 more plays to get you closer. And that just bothered me that last drive.
Yeah, wasn't there another instance too where Ohio State was
It was
like
4th and 1.
Michigan's 45 or
Yeah, it was 4th and
46 and
1.
they punted?
And yeah, and then Mirko punted a 29-yard punt. And it
Yeah,
was 4th and 1. I'm like, dude, what are you? And
that's
by
another
the
one.
way,
Yeah,
I'm going to say this right now. Parker Fleming, I think all Ohio State fans needs to be fired. The special teams is atrocious.
This
The
has been a
special
discussion for like a decade.
You should not have a full-time paying over, I think it's like over $600,000 for a full-time special teams coach on when the special teams is this bad. Save that money and give it to James Laurinaitis. Use Keenan Bailey as a special teams coach. I don't care.
Most
But you have
schools,
to give
I
money.
think, usually
They-
divvy up special
yeah.
teams duty like among all
Exactly.
the other assistant
Yeah.
coaches. So if you're gonna have a dedicated special teams assistant coach, like you better have like top 5 special teams in the country, like the way that you should be
Exactly.
operating.
Yeah, and I mean, Ohio State used to have that when Urban Meyer was there. You know how much he prided himself into special teams. Like it was what it was. And I guess the other thing I want to talk about was just I knew when Kyle McCord threw that interception to begin the game, I said we are now doing what we hated, which was now climbing back into it. Right. I had said, and I believe I said this on the show, I said if Ohio State's going to win this game, they had to get out front early. They had to get out front and then play their game, right? What happened was, and by the way, if you rewatch that play, dude, Will Johnson like knew exactly where he was going with that ball.
Oh yeah.
And it didn't help that McCord stared right at Harrison, but it was almost like Harrison was like, wait, why did he jump that route? Like that, like, you know, like it's not like Harrison was selling the route. So that to me is just a little interesting how that just seemed to jump that. He jumped that way before even the ball was even.
Are you trying to say that they stole signs and knew the play? Is that what you're getting at?
1,000%. I mean, I will be that guy because I know
I
that
think
happened.
Kyle was looking at Marv
No, I
the
know
whole
he was.
time and didn't do anything.
I know, but hey, I gotta have at least give me some grapes here, man. I'm trying a little bit.
Sure.
No, but honestly though, if you take away though that touchdown, right? Okay, people are like, well, Ohio State gave up 30 points. I'm like, dude, they got the ball in the 7. What is Ohio State supposed to do? Like they're going to give up a touchdown or at least a field goal. You know, and I look at the game, man. To be honest, Josh, and this is why it ticks me off that people said Ohio State got manhandled and beat pretty bad. Ohio State was 2 plays away from winning that game on the last drive. If McCord gets that ball out a hair earlier, I'm not saying it would happen, right? I'm not saying they would score a touchdown, but you get that ball, it's probably about, I'm guessing, 28 seconds left. You're at like probably the 28-yard line, 25-yard line. You've seen Harrison. We've seen Ohio State do this once. And that's what I think hurt me the most in that game was like, dude, they played this poorly at times on offense, and yet they were 2 plays away from winning this ball game, right? And I guess also the defense played really good up until that last drive, man. Like that drive bothered me so much on that. I think it was like 3rd and 4 at Michigan's own, I think 30-yard line. And as Joel Klatt said, they missed a pass interference call on Michigan. Like the dude, I don't know if you saw it, like legit pushed off. Like that was the most obvious offensive pass interference call. But anyways, you don't get to stop there. And then Michigan starts doing what they do best and is take the play clock down to 7 seconds, snap the ball, run the ball. And let me ask you, what was the what was the amount of blitzes that Jim Knowles called on Saturday? Throw me a number. Out of all the snaps played, how many blitzes?
You want a percent?
No, just a number of blitz calls in the game.
Well, JJ only threw 20 passes, and maybe there was a couple plays that had penalties and maybe a couple sacks. So it's not going to be like there's a ton of chances, but I'll go ahead and say 5.
4 times that he blitzed. And on that last drive, guess how many times they blitzed on that last drive?
None.
Guess how many times they brought down the safety? They were willing to be passive. They were so scared of last year. I said, what is there to lose?
Did not want to let the big play happen.
I kept
telling a lot of small ones.
I kept texting my friend. I said, what is there to lose? Dude, blitz everyone. You know what they're going to do. They're not going to throw the ball when all they have to do is run the clock out. Dude, send 2 dudes, send 3 dudes, and make Michigan scared. Like I thought Jake Butt on him and Joshua Perry have a podcast, and he said it's something very interesting. He goes, when I think Michigan knew when Ryan Day decided not to go for it on 4th and 1 on Michigan's 45, they knew they were not going to be scared the rest of the game. Ohio State was not scaring them. because it was very obvious that that's the play calling that Ryan Day wanted. The defense was going to be the same way. I felt they did not get Travion Henderson involved very well. I felt that
I was surprised by
did
how
not get
little he was
involved.
involved as well, and I was starting to wonder if there was maybe an injury or something that
No,
we
I
just
mean
weren't
he
being
was
told about.
fine. Yeah, like he played fine. I mean, Harrison obviously had a game like once Will Johnson went out. Like that was the other thing that bothered me, Josh, is why are you not attacking when Will Johnson leaves the game? Dude,
Yeah,
throw
that's the
that
one guy
ball
that you got to
like
be scared of.
yeah, and so
Not that like Rod Moore and Sanders still another secondary isn't uh someone you got to be scared of, but
yeah.
Will Johnson's the guy.
Yeah, I mean it is frustrating. But yeah, I guess a couple of things that I wrote. I have notes here. Um, Another thing I wrote was Kyle McCord. I've heard a lot of people say, he's not the guy. Like and again, I think he's made progress throughout the year. But what I will say, and I think some people have touched on this around the media, at least what I've noticed as someone who's coaching quarterbacks right now, and who's an offensive coordinator and sees it this way, there's no it with him. There's not this like it or this want or this desire. Like he said after the game, man, it's just another game. And I'm
Yeah, that's you
dude,
can't say that. Like him and Gene Smith and all these guys that are like outside of Ohio just calling it
yeah.
another game or it's just one
Like,
game.
you know what they
It's
need? You know what they need? They need to freaking get Jim Tressel or Earl Bruce to come in like every year before this game and tell people that maybe aren't
yeah,
from Ohio and like, hey, this is what the game means.
those
Because
guys got it.
Kyle
Like you
McCord,
guys eventually are gonna get Ryan Montgomery or that other kid from
yeah, St. Clair.
Bellefontaine that are from Ohio and they're gonna know the rivalry and
Yeah.
you'll be fine then. But right now it's like I hear everybody talking about you need to go get Cam Ward out of the transfer portal or Aaron
I'm
Nolan
like,
is gonna have
no.
to
I
start
said
next season
no.
as a true freshman. And I'm like,
So yeah,
I don't know.
to be honest, I don't know where it is. I do know that he does not have the competitive fire, and I would not be shocked if there's an open competition in the spring. I would not be shocked if, let's say, they don't make the college football playoff, which we will talk about here in a second. Um, I don't see him playing the Orange Bowl. Is where they'll probably end up being. I think you'll see maybe a split of Keenholz and Brown. I think maybe Ryan Day just decides, hey, let's just make this an open competition. And also would not shock me if he decides to transfer. If Marvin Harrison does decide to declare, because both him and Caleb Williams have both said they're still going to think things through, they don't really know which way they're leaning. If let's say if he comes back, then maybe you see McCord stay. But again, I wouldn't be shocked if Ibuka's gone, he's gone. Then he's like, well, why am I going to be here? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of interesting things out of this game. Very frustrated. 3 losses in a row to Michigan. It's not something that I'm excited about. Like I know I seem okay right now, but it's more of because I'm seeing it as a logical stance of like things have to change. People are like, well, Ryan Day should have give up play calling. I'm like, not necessarily. I don't know necessarily he needs to give up play calling. I just think he needs to start being more of a CEO. Trust your guys, trust your coaches, get some veteran guys in there. I've heard a lot of people say this, and I believe this. And Josh, you might agree with me on this. They need to get rid of Corey Dennis as the quarterback's coach. I know that's Ryan Day's guy because this man had never coached quarterbacks before Ohio State. He had never been a quarterback. And the name that keeps popping up, and Josh, I think you'll love this, JT Barrett, who's currently coaching for the Lions, to come back as a quarterback coach who, one, brings in the culture that you want to get ready for Michigan every single year, but also brings, the best quarterback probably overall that's ever played for Ohio State. And I guess that idea just sounds really awesome. I think you freshen up. You obviously promote James Laurinaitis. You maybe bring in some other tweaks. Like does our defensive line coach leave? Right? Like does Johnson decide? Like do they just tell him like, hey, you're 71 years old. Maybe it's time to hit the sack. I don't know, but these are just some of the thoughts going in my head. Josh, you can tell me if I'm crazy or if I'm on point here.
It's just crazy because it's like Corey Dennis has been involved with all these great quarterbacks that have come through Ohio State, and
But has he though? But that's the thing though. He's
the
never really.
discussion's always been, is that Corey or is that Ryan
I believe
Day?
it's Ryan Day, and that's what I've always
And
believed.
if it's Ryan Day, then I don't understand what benefit JT Barrett would bring to the table, I guess. Kind of like with play calling. It's like, is this Brian Hartline's offense or is this Ryan Day's offense? Does Ryan just need to like give up some control?
Yeah. I don't know. Like I do know that like Justin Fry, like he might not be with Ohio State next year because supposedly he's interested in the Indiana job. You have, Brian Hartline, I don't think will be up for any coaching jobs this year like last year. I just think he didn't have a big impact. So I think he'll kind of stay. And people keep saying, well, Ryan Day leave. Like Ryan Day is a competitor. I don't want anybody to believe that he's not. Like he's a competitor. And I think, again, it's just different. Remember what about the last two coaches, Josh? Where are they from? Ohio. Right? Like they grew up in this rivalry. They understood the rivalry. I'm not saying Ryan Day doesn't understand it. I think he learned it. But what he should do is invest his time to learn about Ohio, learn about the passion behind it, because I think sometimes he gets irritated by fans. But dude, if you've been around Ohio State football, these fans have been like this since 1990, right? Or 1920, right? Like these fans have always been this way. You just have to learn to suck it up. Like Woody Hayes back in the 40s, right? Right near 50. I think it was like 50 when fans protested after 3 straight years losing to Michigan and said, we want to get rid of him. You know what he did the next year? He went out and won a national title because he took what the fans said and said, all right, I'm going to make myself a winner and I'm going to make this team a winner. Right. And I think at the end of the day, Ryan Day needs to look himself in the mirror this offseason and say, what do I need to do to put this team in the best place for? Because like everyone says, Josh, you can't get any better at recruiting. They've got the best classes every single year. You don't need to do anything.
He's recruiting better than Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel did.
So my thing is, it's not the talent. It's the intangibles.
These last 3 years. Yeah. These last 3 years, you've out-recruited Michigan. You've put more first-rounders in the NFL. It's not a talent issue.
And they've wasted 3 years of quality players. Can you imagine this 2021 class, which was loaded? Marvin Harrison Jr., Kyle McCord, JT Tuilamolau, Jack Sawyer, all these dudes.
Yeah, that 21 class, man.
All they had this whole 21 class, and this class will have never beat Michigan, and this class will have never won a national title, and only competed for one game in the college football playoff. It's so disheartening because I think he wasted so much talent in this time span. So I'm really interested to see. Obviously, we could go on and on about the game, and if you want to know more, hey, let me know, message me. Like I would love to talk about this game. There's a lot of things I look at, and we're going to talk about here in a second. But Josh, the new rankings dropped. I don't know if we'll talk about the games that happened last week, because really what matters is this week's games. But the one game I do want to mention before we talk about the rankings is, what about that Auburn-Alabama game? Like, poor Crane brothers, man. I love what they said. They're like, and of course Auburn found a way to lose it.
And we were talking about it last week. Like, this is a game that,
it's a weird game,
rivalry week or not. Like, some people say it's gonna be close, and I'm like, Auburn just lost to whatever school it was that they paid him over $1 million to come and beat them. We're like, yeah, this is going to be a bloodbath with the way Bama's came down at the right time, and Auburn's coming down at cold. And yeah, they were right there. And then they only blitzed 2 and spied a third from 31 yards out. So
how did
wild defensive call there?
But how did they let that? Like, dude, that ball was like, I mean, it was a good thrown ball, but still, like, dude.
If you're going to have 8 guys back like that, you cannot lose a receiver. There's only 5 guys to worry about, and you have 8 defenders.
Did it baffle you, though, that, like, they decided to, like, I don't know. Like, dude, if you see that ball in the air as a DB, just follow the ball. Like, all of you should have ran over to the ball and just said, we're getting this out of bounds. I do not care. It's sad because that put a wrench, I think, in, to a lot of teams' hopes, is like, oh, we don't have to worry about Alabama. And of course,
that would have been their second loss. Yeah. And speaking of second losses, Louisville losing to Kentucky gave them a second loss and eliminated them from ever having a shot either.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are they're slowly chipping away. And so, yeah, we could go into rivalry week. We could talk about how Iowa, again, had one of the ugliest wins of all time.
I was watching the end of that, and there was like 4 or 5 possessions in the final 2 minutes.
Dude, this Iowa team is so bad, and yet they just
10 wins.
Dude, I don't get it, man. It is the ugliest offense I've ever watched. Like, it honestly is so ugly to watch. And yet this team is going to play for Big Ten championship. And this is, once again, Josh, where we both have said this should be Ohio State-Michigan rematch this week. That's what it should be.
Those are the 2 best teams in the Big Ten.
Like, you shouldn't be having to, like, have this, like, sacrificial lamb every year.
Washington's playing Oregon again. You got Louisville playing Florida State. You got Texas and Oklahoma State.
Because then you're not then you're not putting Ohio State. Ohio State's now they have a chance to fix that wrong, right? And they can have that a chance to make it. And so let's go over the power rankings, not the power rankings, sorry, the college football playoff rankings.
Playoff poll.
So right now at number 1, you have Georgia. Michigan obviously moved up to 2. 3 is Washington. 4 is Florida State. 5 is Oregon, which there's a little bit of interestingness on that one. 6 is Ohio State. 7 Texas. 8 Alabama, and then so on, because who cares after that point? So we look at these standings. Tell me what you think the rankings. I do have a little bone to pick, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, right now at the top 4, I got no issue with. I mean, that's the last 4 undefeated teams, and they're probably properly ranked from best to worst here. Georgia being, we've been saying it, 2-time defending national champs. They're going to be at 1 until proven otherwise. Michigan just beat Ohio State, so obviously they're going to move up to 2 in that case. And Washington has a lot of ranked wins, although they're close. They're ranked wins, and they're at 3rd. Florida State, the committee's been looking for a way to get them out, but they keep winning. They beat my Gators this last weekend.
Your Gators blew that game, by the way.
Yeah, I didn't realize that we also didn't have Graham Mertz playing in that game, but there was still mental mistakes and a dude spitting in somebody's face for a 15-yard.
Sandwiching their quarterback, like literally, I thought the guy was going to die. Like he just got sandwiched.
Yeah, they had 2 guys come in and nail Florida State's dude too. So, but yeah, Florida State still winning without Jordan Travis, and they're there at 4, clinging by a thread, I feel like. But after that, like you said, is where it gets interesting, because this is where the resumes don't really seem to add up. You got Oregon at 5, Ohio State 6, Texas at 7, and Bama at 8. I've been seeing a lot of people talk about Ohio State needing to be ahead of Oregon, and I think it's a valid argument. It's just I don't think Ohio State should be at 5 then. I think 6 is probably right, and maybe you should just move Texas up to 5.
No, my thing is this. I think I believe this because I've heard a few national podcasts talk about this. It does not matter for Ohio State if they were at 5 or 6. This is the end of the day. And I want to go over the scenario real quick. If you don't know, as an Ohio State fan, especially if you're a Ohio State fan, you're going, well, we're going to make the playoff. Let me give you the scenario. You ready? Make sure you write this down because it's kind of crazy. All right. Georgia has to beat Alabama. Then you have to have Oklahoma State, who looks awful half the time and looks good other times, has to then beat Texas, who's a 15-point underdog. Then you have to have Louisville beat Florida State. And then you have to probably most likely you need Washington to beat Oregon just for safety, right? So
that's what I've been telling people.
If all that happens, that's 4 things to happen, right? And it's not impossible. Trust me. I've watched college football long enough to know craziness happens on conference championship week. If all that happens, then there's no way the committee looks and goes, they have to put Ohio State in. At that point, they have to.
It's like last year with USC losing the final weekend. It's like, well, the only other team we can put in is Ohio State at this point.
Yes. And now some people say, well, if Oregon beats Washington, but that one's going to be more of a trickier one. I still think Ohio State would get in over Washington. I still think they like Ohio State
I don't think you can look at any one team scenario in a vacuum, because it's all dependent on everybody else, because we've never really had this many one-loss teams coming in. There's 8 of them, undefeateds and 1 losses, and I think for the most part we've come down to maybe 5 or 6.
And when we wish we had this, and I never thought we'd have wished to say I would have the 18 playoff, but here we are, or 12-team playoff. But
we'll see if it works itself out. Yeah. But
I do think look, the most obvious for Ohio State, right? I do believe I will talk about this when we talk about our picks, but I think Louisville has a really good shot of beating Florida State. And I'm surprisingly going to say I think Oklahoma State also has a good shot if they run the ball well. We've seen Texas struggle at times on defense. Look, I will say this. I said this before the show started to Josh, and I'll say this on here. I am not going to be shocked if Ohio State does not make the playoff, and I'll also not be shocked if they make it. I think, Josh, that's a good way of saying it. Like, again, do I think they're going to make it? Probably not. 90% of me says no, they're going to the Orange Bowl, because that's where they're going to end up. They'll play the Louisville in the Orange Bowl, which would be just the most boring game, at least television wise. But also you have to remember, and I'm going to say this now, the committee likes big brands. And let's be honest, if you have Washington versus Ohio State as a final spot, or Washington, Texas, Ohio State, or however it would be, but specifically Washington versus Ohio State, Washington loses. Guys, they're not stupid. They're going to put the brand that actually is going to bring them viewers, because at the end of the day, they care about money. So again, I'm not like shocked either way. But I will ask you this, Josh. Percentage. Give me a percent. Chance you think Ohio State makes a playoff on Sunday this coming weekend?
I'm going to give it 15%.
That is a very generous number.
A
Very
little generous. I'm thinking through scenarios here, and Ohio State being at 6 sounds very favorable. And yes, Washington can win and knock Oregon below them, and maybe Louisville can beat Florida State and knock them out of the top 4 too. But you got to remember that if Texas wins in this case, then that's a one-loss Big 12 conference champ compared to Ohio State with
agreed. Yeah.
a one-loss no conference champ. Texas
Yep.
being below Ohio State right now is probably jumping them in that case.
Yeah, of course.
Because there's these other teams that are below them that are also going to be playing. If Alabama wins the SEC,
that just throws a wrench for everything. That just
beats Georgia. That's the number one win right there.
Yeah,
and that's also, like you said, throws a wrench in everything, because are they going to drop Georgia from 1 to out of the top 4 then?
Dude, that is a scenario. No,
absolute chaos scenario is for Alabama to beat Georgia, so you have an SEC one-loss champ.
To be honest,
and then you need Oregon to beat Washington.
This would probably
be one losses.
I think this would probably end up being like, let's say Alabama beats Georgia. I think you see Florida State, if they would win, I still think you would not put them in. I think the committee would go, do we want a backup quarterback run?
You would take undefeated Florida State as an ACC champ out of it.
Oh, for sure. I think if you what do you think as the fan base? Do you want your NCAA fan base to be?
This is what I'm going to say about that. I'm going to say you cannot do that, because in the first college football playoff rankings, you had this chance to do it to Ohio State. They had their third string quarterback, and you could have said absolutely not. They don't even have their starter. They don't even have their backup. It's a third string, and they put him in the playoff anyways, and they won the national championship. I don't think you can do that to Florida State. We've gotten to see Florida State win games with their backup quarterback, and if their backup quarterback goes in and wins a conference championship game against Louisville, who's still a top 15 team, respected in the country, I think you got to put them in still. Yeah. You can't just leave them out just because they're not as good with Jordan Travis. They still have the resume and won all those games and earned that spot.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, for sure. I'm not.
But it is going to be interesting. If Alabama wins, I think that's going to make the most interesting scenarios, just because it doesn't probably knock Georgia out of the top 4.
Yeah, I'm going to
Whereas all these other teams, if they lose, they're probably falling out of the top 4.
I'm going to just say that Ohio State has a 8% chance. I'm going 8%. Lower than Josh. And who would have thought the guy wearing a Ohio State jersey would have a lower percentage than Josh? But look, I'm already preparing mentally that they're going to the Orange Bowl, that Marvin Harrison Jr. won't play, that Cade Stover won't play, that a lot of these other dudes won't play. And I'm preparing myself for that, because I don't want to get my hopes up, because I'm a Ohio State fan and we know how that works. So yeah, it'll be interesting. It was a great game. Again, hats off to Michigan. Hats off. You wanted David Cohn. I hope you did it. We are going to talk at the end of the show. I didn't tell Josh this. We are going to talk about the Lady Ballers that's going to be coming out, that I will just mention at the end, just because that's going to be fun. But before we get to that, before we get to next week's games, let's go over our power rankings and our Heisman watch list heading into this final doozy.
This is tough, dude.
All right, so here we go. So last week's power rankings. I had Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, 3 Michigan, 4 Washington, 5 Oregon. Josh had Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, 3 Michigan, 4 Washington, 5 Oregon. So I'll go first this week, because I feel like I need to get this off my chest. I'm going to still put Georgia at 1. I just still think they're the best team. Michigan beat Ohio State, but I still think Georgia they're Georgia. It's hard to put them out of there. I'm going to put Michigan at 2. I do think beating Ohio State puts that. I'm going to put Oregon at 3. I think Oregon has slowly come on as a very, very talented team. And I'm going to put Washington at 4. So I'll keep them at 4. I'm going to put Ohio State at 5. I still think Ohio State's the top 5 team in the country. I know rankings might not say that, but if I'd put Ohio State against every team, maybe outside of Georgia, and obviously Michigan just beat them, I still think they can beat Washington. I think they can beat Oregon. I think they can beat Florida State and Texas and Alabama on a daily on a game to game basis. So I still have Ohio State at 5.
All right. My top 5. I'm sticking with Georgia at 1. I will bump Michigan up to 2 now, and that's when it gets interesting, because I'm kind of with you. I think that Oregon's going to beat Washington this weekend. I'm going to go ahead and act on that in my ranking too, and say that Oregon's 3. I've been thinking they're the better team, and I've just been leaving Washington ahead just because they keep winning games. But
Yep.
now that they're going to face each other again, I'm going to go ahead and finally like make that move. I've been thinking Oregon's better. I'm going to put them there at 3, and I'll drop Washington just below them to 4, and I'll leave Ohio State in here at 5 for now. I think losing to
By
Michigan,
6 on the road.
the number 3 team at the time, my number 2 team in the country on the road by 6 is like that's
Last
got to be the
possession.
best loss in the whole entire country, right?
Yeah, but also doesn't it?
Not
Isn't
that
it
like we
weird?
want to
Isn't it?
make
Yeah, no.
losses like
Isn't
good,
it
but
weird though, Josh, that they talk about the game like they lost by 30? Like it just feels that way. It's like people talk about this game like they lost by 30 when they lost
yeah.
by a less than a touchdown and they were possessional, like literally a drive away from winning that ball game.
This is what people are saying about Georgia too, that they've beaten Ole Miss and they've beaten Missouri and they've beaten Tennessee, and just because they lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game by maybe one score, if it is the case, they're going to drop them out of the top 4 then because of that. That's the
Which they
case.
what they just did to Ohio State, like what they
Yeah.
just did to Ohio State. So I think it's only fair that happens to Georgia
Yeah,
because
that's the case with Georgia because and they've also have like the 2 straight national championships too. But it's a conversation. It's gonna be a tough one if, like we said, we end up with like all these 1-loss teams and a bunch of conference champions, and it's like, oh man.
Now I believe, is this our last Heisman watch list, or will be next week our last Heisman watch list?
Some people say you should include conference championship week, but Jaden Daniels isn't playing, so I'm not counting it. This is gonna be my final Heisman
Okay, this
rankings.
will be our let's do this be our final. So last week I had Jaden Daniels 1, Bo Nix 2, 3 Michael Penix Jr., 4 Dylan Gabriel, 5 Marv. You had the same as me. So Josh, how about you start with number 5 and work your way up?
Well, that's a tough one. I know who my top 4 are, and I've been thinking about Marv at 5, and
He had a good game. Yeah,
really I got to leave him there.
By the way, that catch, can we talk about that catch, by the way? That was unreal. He got tackled and was literally just one arm sitting on his butt and just grabs the ball with one arm.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and leave Marv at 5. That'll be mine.
Big Ten Player of the Year, by the way. Only the 3rd wide receiver ever to win Big Ten Player of the Year. 1 wide receiver of the year. Kate Stover won tight end of the year. By the way, Eichenberg won linebacker of the year when he didn't play like the last 4 games outside the Michigan. Like, just weird. Oh, awards are fun. So you got Marv at 5. I also have Marv at 5. Again, Josh and I love to talk about the token position player because this happens every year. There's always one guy.
They always include one that they definitely aren't going to vote.
Oh, of course, he won't win it, but I do believe it's Marv. And people keep saying, "Well, Malik Neighbors." I'm like, dude, the dude has 50 more targets than Marv. Like, of course, his numbers are going to be better. Like, he has 50 more targets, as well as Aduzie from Washington. Like, they throw the ball all the time, both those teams. So for me, I just think Marvin Harrison, like the catches he made against Michigan, I'm like, yeah, tell me someone that's better. So I'm gonna go Marv at 5. 4 for you.
I think we can go ahead and keep Dylan Gabriel there too. Ended the year on a high note. I'm going to go ahead and pull up his stat line. They had a slugfest though with
I know.
Who was it? It was I gotta find it. Hang on, I went to Ole Miss instead of Oklahoma's stats. Oh, 69-45 with TCU.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And Gabriel, I mean, once again, was a pretty big part of that. 400 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, another touchdown on the ground. So yeah, just solidified himself. Led Oklahoma to a 10-2 record after what they went through last year. Right up there in total touchdowns and yards this year. The dude put Oklahoma back in relevant discussion across the country. Dylan Gabriel at 4.
Yeah, I'm going to say Dylan Gabriel. I just think there's no one else outside of, obviously Marv. I don't think there's anybody else that I'm going, yeah, you deserve to be in the top 4. I can't look. I looked around. I looked at quarterbacks. I looked at running backs. I'm like, there's no one other. And Dylan Gabriel has been consistent all year. He hasn't really faded away, even in the losses. So I'm going to say Dylan Gabriel at 4.
Right. Well, the top 3, I mean, again, I think we got a pretty solid top 3 across the country. It's like you can't really talk about anybody
else.
But Yeah, between Michael Penix and Bo Nix, and it's Jaden Daniels. I think I'm gonna go ahead and leave Michael Penix there at 3. I
He's
love what
looked a
I
little
saw from
rough.
Bo Nix against Oregon State in the Civil War.
Yeah.
Big part of it. And not that Michael Penix wasn't bad himself either, but I'm gonna go ahead and put Michael there at 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna put Michael at
Still
3.
very
I
good
think
season.
for me, I think he's had a good season, but he hasn't looked as flashy as he did earlier in the year. I think he's looked solid, but again, we know what the Heisman means, man. You have to have a flashy moment, and I don't know if he's had a flashy moment really all year where he's like, man, this guy's the dude. So I'm gonna say Michael Penix Jr. stays at 3 for me. This is where it gets interesting.
Yeah, I'm keeping Bo at 2.
It's tight though. I will say this top two
Yeah,
is gonna be tight.
it is tight. Yeah, but Bo is staying at 2, and respect to him. I think he's done without looking. Actually, I can go ahead and look right now. I think he's done more than Jaden Daniels through the air, and he
Yeah.
has like the top completion percentage in the country. It's like
Did
78
you
or
think that was funny
79%.
did you think that was funny that the committee said, why is Texas or Alabama not as high as why is Oregon higher? Because of Bo's completion percentage. And I was like, really, dude? Like,
Bo leads the country in
okay.
completion percentage and actually overtook Michael Penix this weekend for total passing yards too.
Yeah,
But
he's
nevertheless, I there's somebody that I like better. Wink,
yeah,
wink.
yeah. I for me, this was tough, but I just the record of Jaden Daniels just stresses me out. I'm like, why am I putting
That's why I
it's just
don't
such
think he'll
a
get the votes.
no, I
Vegas
don't
is
think he
favoring
will.
Bo Nix right now, and
Yeah,
it's definitely because of the 3
yeah.
losses LSU has.
I'm gonna keep Bo Nix at 2, but with a caveat that I think it's like within a hair reach of Jaden Daniels. And I think for both of us, here we go. Jaden Daniels
Jaden
number
Daniels.
1. Yes,
Yep.
Jaden Daniels number 1 for both of us. I think it's very obvious what this guy does. He is a freak. I mean, just watching him play, he's went from being not really a draft pick, really a top draft pick, to being probably a top 10 pick. He's phenomenal. Um, yeah, and so this is our top 5 there, Josh. I mean, Drake May was the only one that I was at like 6 for me. He was the only one that was about to edge in, but I
Mm.
just think he's had a rough year this year. So,
Jaden
um,
Daniels almost 5,000 total yards, 50 total
dude,
touchdowns, leads
ridiculous,
the
dude.
country in QBR. All of those are he leads the country in.
Solid.
It's got to be him. I'm not
It's
gonna
got to
let
be
his
him.
defense
It's
keep him
him,
from
man.
winning a Heisman.
It's him. But anyways, Josh, that is our power rankings, our Heisman. Now let's be, we're not going to spend a lot of time on the NFL or anything else because there's so much college football. So we're going to spend this time here on breaking down the upcoming championship games and giving you predictions like we always do, and how I will always drill down and Josh will just give you a nice, I think they'll win. That's normally what Josh does. So that's the way we are. Anyways, Josh, let's get this started.
Let's start with the Pac-12 championship. I'm glad there's no divisions, and this will be the final Pac-12 championship game we
She's
ever
so
see.
weird, dude. So weird.
Yeah, so we got Oregon and Washington in this one. We know how the first game went. Washington, I believe, won 37-33. But this time, Oregon, I don't know if they were the favorite the last time or not, but they are a 9.5 point favorite, which very surprised by that. But maybe the neutral field has something to do with that since it's not at one place or the other. But they're playing this game at Allegiant Stadium too, where I believe the Raiders play. So
Yes.
it should be a pretty exciting venue there. Both teams should be able
No
to travel
weather.
pretty well with their fan bases to that location too. But I really like it, Ben. I'm gonna go ahead and I don't know that Oregon is covering that 9.5 though. I think it's gonna be a close game just like the first time it was. I think it was like 3 or 4.5 points the first time, and I think it's gonna be about that kind of a game once again here. So if Oregon covers 9.5, I'll be shocked, but I'm gonna go ahead and take them to win by a field goal in this one.
You drilling down or no drill down? Just field goal.
I mean,
Got
if
it.
you want a final score, it'll probably both teams will probably get in the 30s. We'll probably get like a 38-35. We could get a 37-34. We could
Oh
get
geez, you give
a
me
35 to
options. Goodness.
31 kind of thing,
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh. Drive me nuts. No, I'm gonna say that they cover this.
Really.
I just think that Washington has not looked great. They have squeaked by, and Oregon has just looked good. Like they just look like a legit team that's in the top 3 or top 4. I'm going to say Oregon wins this game. I'm going to go 56-45. I'm going shootout, classic Pac-12, no defense. We're going to go 56-45. Bo Nix throws for, let's go 6 tutties, and Michael Penix throws for 5 touchdowns, and it's just a quarterback frenzy game.
I do think Heisman Trophy is going to have a lot to do with how this game goes.
Oh, yes.
But, yeah, like you said, at the end of the season, Oregon's looked like the better team since they first met, and they have had some common opponents within that, like USC and Oregon State, and I think Oregon's looked like the better team than Washington when they've played both those teams.
You mentioned the Civil War, and speaking of Oregon State, did you hear that like the head coach that's going to Michigan State now, he like told the team like the day before the game?
Yeah.
I'm like, that is so messed up. I'm sorry. Like, as a player, like, what do you do? Like, oh, great.
Yeah, and I'm also surprised that Jonathan Smith is going for that job. It's almost like a lateral move, and he's also like an Oregon State alum. Like he's at his place, and he's going to like another school that's basically, well, yeah. At the end of the day, it's all money, and we knew he was going to leave Oregon State anyways because they're not going to be in a Power 5 conference anymore. It's just that.
The Pac-12
I'm surprised that it was Michigan State.
They're allowing there to be a Pac-12 with 2 teams.
Ew.
It just hurts.
Yeah, no playoff bids over there.
But anyway, so yeah, that's that score, Josh. But I think we have to talk about the Texas game because this is where Mr. Bowden over here is about to just surprise y'all.
Are you gonna go ahead and take Oklahoma State in this one?
I'll say this before you get into the details. I'm gonna say. You can probably see where I'm going with a lot of these picks.
Because I'll go ahead and say I feel much better about Texas than I did a couple weeks ago after the way that they handled Texas Tech.
Yeah, but Texas Tech.
Yeah, but listen to this though, Ben. They only beat TCU, a 5-win team, by 3. They beat Iowa State by 10 the week before that. They beat Kansas State, ranked team, by 3. And then they go into Texas Tech, a fully healthy Quinn Ewers, and beat them by 50.
No, I get it.
We haven't seen like Texas win a game like that since like Kansas, honestly. Yeah, and they haven't beat anybody by 50 this year. So
I'm gonna say
that's a lot of momentum to carry in here. And I'm feeling really good about the Longhorns right now.
I'm gonna say Oklahoma State wins this game. I'm gonna say 30. I'm gonna say 28-24. Oklahoma State, and I think they're going to do it by running the ball. I think they have Ollie Gordon, who's like one of the best running backs in college football this year. I think you get behind him, man, which is completely opposite of what Gundy likes to do. But I think this is what you do. You run the ball. You make Texas have to earn every single play, kind of like what Michigan did against Ohio State, and I got Oklahoma State winning.
That probably is the formula. Oklahoma State beat Oklahoma, and the game was in the 20s over there as well. If you're getting into a shootout, I feel like the odds favor Texas. But like I said, I like Texas in this one. I'm feeling much better about them after what I saw last week, and they're a 15.5-point favorite. But I don't know if they'll necessarily cover it. I think they can win by 2 scores though, so I'm going to go ahead and give Texas something like a 35-25.
Hey, go for it! Go for it.
We will. SEC championship game.
I'm so glad I don't bet. I'd be so poor.
I'm not very good at it either. But Georgia, Bama, this is the big one. These teams are your prototypical.
You mean Michigan, Iowa's not a big one?
Oh, it's a big one. It's just not the big one, you know.
Okay.
But Georgia, Bama, these teams, I've heard it said they're built to beat each other, and that's the case. They're built to win national championships. That's how they always recruit and how they plan their seasons out. And here they are right now. Bama, I think teams have had their shot to get them, and they haven't been able to, and they've just gotten better as the weeks have gone on, with the exception of Auburn last week. I still don't have an explanation for that one. But I mean, Georgia's kind of been like the same case too. They've been getting better as the season's gone on too, and they actually also struggled against Auburn when they played too. So take that for what it's worth. Auburn almost got the best of
Hugh Freeze, man.
The 2 best teams in the conference. Yeah, Hugh Freeze is a good coach, and this is probably the worst Auburn team he's ever going to have, honestly. But yeah, Georgia's riding some nice momentum in here too. they're coming off, like I mentioned before, they beat Florida by 23. They beat Missouri by 9. They crushed Ole Miss 52-17. They beat Tennessee by 28. Georgia Tech last week, they only won by 8. And I don't know if that was
I
just
think they pulled their starters
them
early,
chilling
I
out.
believe.
I mean, Carson Beck played the whole game.
Yeah. I bet they did
but
rest some guys.
But they did a lot more running the football in this one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, take that for what it is. I'm not going to read too much into that one, but this is tight, man. I really don't know who's going to win this one. I would lean more towards Georgia just to be safe, but what do you think, Ben?
I think Georgia just has Alabama. The rushing defense last week really made me worried. If you would have asked me last week, I would have said Alabama has a really good shot of winning. Seeing the way that Auburn just kind of ran through that defense really gives me the Ohio State game vibes back in 2014 when Zeke Elliott just kind of like said, "You're mine." So I'm leaning towards Georgia, and I'm going to say Georgia wins this game. I'm going to say it's not going to be a high-scoring one. I think it's going to be like 20. I'm going to go 24-21. No, I'm going to go 27-21 Georgia. I think they're going to come out with a decent win and solidify themselves as the number 1 team.
I actually think this could be a game that gets to the 40s, honestly.
Hey, I'm just saying I've been right lately.
That'll be maybe my bold prediction, if you will. This is a game that somebody's going to get to the 40s in, and I'm going to go ahead and say it's Georgia because I think they're going to win.
My bold prediction is punt return for a touchdown seals the game.
Well, give me Georgia 45 and give me Bama 38.
Also, I forgot to say my bold prediction for Oklahoma State. Bold prediction: Ollie Gordon runs for 250. Which he's done.
A big game from him if they're going to win. Yeah.
I think we should finish up by talking about Iowa and Michigan just for the fun and giggles.
You want to talk about Florida State Louisville first?
Yeah, we can do that first. Yeah. Let's just save the worst for last.
Both these games are happening at 8:00, and Florida State actually is a 2.5-point favorite in theirs. And I mean, the storyline is basically what we've already said. There's no Jordan Travis in this one. They've won their last 2 games with him mostly being out or out entirely. And Louisville, they've been looking a little shaky. They really haven't been tested at all this year, Ben. That was a big reason why people thought they would have a great shot to make the conference championship game to begin with. And maybe people got a little too excited after their win over Notre Dame. But, they lose to Kentucky last week 38-31. Before that, they only beat Miami 38-31. Before that, they beat Virginia 31-24. So something's lacking there. And this is like, you don't want to be playing your worst football once the season's come to an end. And you're playing the better teams and you're starting to kind of like show your true colors here. And Florida State, they've been hanging in there. And I didn't think I was going to go with it last week, but I think Florida State, I've seen enough from them that they can go ahead and at least win this game against Louisville. It's going to be a grit fest, though. This is going to be one of those lower scoring games that you were just talking about with Georgia and Bama. I think Florida State's going to have to win this one. They can get 28. I think they'll be fine. Give me a 28-24 victory for Florida State here.
I'm still worried a little bit about Florida State in the big games, right? Like I'm not. They have won some big games, but like what I'm saying is like without Jordan Travis, and what happens if you get down, right? Get down maybe 14 or you get down 10. Does this team have the it factor to come back from that? And Louisville runs the ball pretty well, and Jeff Brom has this team on all cylinders. Again, I would love to see that matchup versus Ohio State. Not really because Jeff Brom beat Ohio State in Purdue when he was with Purdue, but again, I just think it's an interesting thought to think about this game, and I'm going to actually say that Louisville squeaks by a win here. I'm going to say Louisville wins. I think it's going to be low scoring too. I think it's going to be like, I'm going to go 21-18. Never thought I would do a 21-18, man. Just throw out a weird number, man. 21-18. I'm going to say Louisville wins this. I think their defense will come up big, and the run game will come up big. So I'm going to say Louisville wins this game.
So finally, the Big Ten championship. Did we also have Michigan, Iowa in it last year?
Yes, I believe so. Yes, I'm pretty sure.
If not, they were 2 years ago too. I'm gonna go ahead and check on that.
Yeah, I
But
believe it was.
Michigan,
Yeah,
Iowa.
I believe it was.
No, it was actually Purdue last year.
Yeah, it was Purdue. Yeah, because it was a
Purdue
terrible
last
game.
year. Iowa the year before that.
Yeah,
Yeah. And they
I
beat the crap out of Purdue,
I
if I
I
remember
do
correctly.
believe I do believe this game is going to be a lot lower scoring than what people think, and I don't think it's going to be a blowout. Like I think this game is going to actually be a classic Big Ten game.
I think it will. I mean, Iowa, ideally, if they played their game plan the way that, like at an elite level, they'd probably look a lot like Michigan.
Oh yeah,
Michigan
for
just does what
sure.
Iowa
Yeah, yeah,
does a lot better. And
yeah.
I think Michigan's fine playing that kind of football too. I think they're fine with JJ sticking around like 20 to 25 passes and Blake Corum getting over 20 carries and Donovan Edwards getting over 15 and winning the game like
Yeah.
maybe 30 to
Now
3. I think they're okay with that.
they did lose their best lineman. I know they were okay against
Yes,
Ohio
no Zach
State,
Sinter.
but that I know it was against Ohio State. But look, that was when Ohio State was dead tired. Like everyone was tired, and it was the end of the game. I'm interested to see how they do the full game. I'm going to say Michigan wins this game. I'm going to say 13-6. 13 to
13.
6.
Wow.
13-6. Because Iowa's defense is very good. It's a very good defense.
It is. I just think that I'm going to give Michigan's offense a little more credit than that. I think they're going to be excited to have Jim Harbaugh back
Listen,
on the
it might be
sideline
it
too.
might be a little saltiness, okay? I'm just saying. It's 13-6.
There could be a little bit of that too. I'm going to go 30 to 3 like I was just saying.
Okay, I will say if you notice, Josh, about my picks here, did you notice something that was a pattern there in my picks?
No.
I picked every team that Ohio State needs to lose. I picked against every team that Ohio State needs to lose, so that means Ohio State is going to make the final
I didn't
CFP.
put that together, but I see what you
Yeah.
did there.
So I do believe the final CFP will be Georgia, Michigan, Oregon, and Ohio State. That's what my final prediction for the CFP will be. And a lot of people will be very mad, just like last year, but I do not
Yep.
care. And I would love to see a Georgia Ohio State rematch. I would love to see that. And I would love to see a win by Ohio State and a win by Michigan. And oh my word, would that just make do you think I'm gonna ask you this, Josh? Do you think this would in a sense be like a redemption thing for Ryan Day? Like, do you think the Buckeye Nation, if he would beat Michigan in the national title game, do you feel like all the hate, all the frustration they have with Ryan, do you feel like that is like you've now hit the cream of the crop? You've not only beat Michigan, you beat them in a national title game. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a discussion that North Carolina and Duke basketball fans have had too, is if you beat the other team in the tournament, it's like forever bragging
Yeah.
rights in the rivalry. And to my knowledge, I don't think Ohio State and Michigan have
No,
faced
they haven't.
a
No.
national championship game, at least not in the BCS era when they started doing it with the final game at the end of the season instead of just declaring a number one team. But yeah, I think that definitely gives Ryan Day a little bit of forgiveness, especially if it's at that level. It would also show that they did things a little bit differently. It came out a little bit more aggressive
Give
than
them a
what they have
month. Give them
before.
a month.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
a month to recover and
it'll
get
be
ready.
interesting. And we'll see what happens. Josh, I do want to finish up. Like we won't talk about the transfers really because really it hasn't opened yet. So Josh and I can't really talk about the transfers or really coaching moves. I guess Josh, you would say, right? We can't really talk about too much because we just know who is winning the transfer portal. We don't know what's happening, or we can't predict anything. So just for time's sake, we will talk about that next week. We will mention that next week. Obviously, the Browns are injury prone, and Joe Flacco's on the Browns. Still weird.
Hey,
So
on
weird.
the college note, what do you have to say about Colorado's first season under Deion Sanders now
I
that
will
we
say
know
this
that
right now.
4-8 is the
I
final
want
record?
I want everyone to look at me in the eyes, and I want you to stare at me. Stop saying that he did a remarkable job by going from 1 to 4 wins. I saw two
It's
teams this
very
year.
embarrassing.
I saw Northwestern go from 1 to 7. I forget the other team that I saw went from like 1 to 8. Like, stop it. Just because, dude, this dude's lost more recruits in the last a week than he's gained in the time he's been there. Like, this goes to prove my point that I've been talking with people for the last few months. You cannot win championships by going through the transfer portal. You have to develop your own guys. You cannot, this is not free agency. It's never going to work. I don't believe it's going to work when you're uploading your whole roster. Maybe a few guys here and there, it can work. You cannot just keep like he even said like, oh, all guys are up for transition next year. I'm like, dude, you guys cared more about persona. Your boys, all they cared about was the commercials they were in. Like, to me, it just felt like Colorado, this is not like a success. You went 4-8. Dude, you went 4-8. This is not like you're not jumping up for joy, man. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think 4 wins. I mean, it beat their Vegas over under win total before the season. So in that sense, it's like you win 4 games after winning 1 year the year before. It's like, okay, you took a step in the right direction. But the way that people are making it out to be like
Dude.
some success story, it's like you said, Northwestern didn't go out in the portal and get 50 players. They had their head coach get fired like a week before the season started.
They won
And they
7
went
games.
and I picked them to go 0-12 before the season
You
started
did.
because I was like, nobody cares about Northwestern. Now that they got rid of Pat Fitzgerald, no one's ever going to care about as much as them. They're never going to get anybody to recruit to that place because it's a bunch of nerds to begin with. And then they come out and win 7 games. And then you got
And
Deion Sanders here who goes out and gets 50 different guys, which I'm with you. I don't think you can build a national contender that way. But I think starting off with a clean slate of new faces like that is something that you can do. And obviously we saw how it ended up being. And you even got like Travis Hunter, a top player in his recruiting class, and you get a 4-star quarterback like Shadur Sanders to come in. And like you had way more talent on that roster,
you still
I
only
want
won
to
4
say, than
games.
Northwestern did, and won 4 games with it. So let's just call it what it is. It's a step in the right direction.
I
It's not a
think
success story. It's not like something that no other coach in the country could have done. Let's see what happens in the next couple of years, but it's just funny like watching people push that. And
I
maybe
think
I even jumped the gun on Colorado too because I thought they'd
we
win
both did.
3 or 4 before the
Yeah.
season started, and then I was like, okay, maybe they'll win 6 or 7 now, and it ended up just
I
being
will say
4.
I think Josh is right now figuratively pointing the finger at RG3, who RG3 just makes, by the way,
Yes.
he should never be allowed to
The worst
tweet, to
commentator in
talk,
football right
anything.
now. I
Did you
hate
did you hear
any
what he
kind of
said on, I think it was like on Friday? He's like, welcome to Black Friday, because he was with another
yeah.
black. I'm like, dude, like just stop, dude.
He
Like,
always says like cringe stuff like that to try to keep himself relevant because if you only had his football points to judge him on, he'd be
dude, and
terrible.
it's
But
just,
if he
but
says
it's
something
also
like that, it
like,
gives people something else to talk
dude,
about.
I used to like you, and you've become so woke that it's just like annoying at this point. Like, honestly.
It's not even just woke, it's just bad.
Yeah, it is just bad. But speaking of woke, Josh, before we go, have you seen the trailer for the Lady Ballers?
I haven't. I haven't
That
really
is so
looked at
sad.
anything. I've seen the ads like on Instagram
Dude,
for it,
it
like the
is,
posters and the pictures and who's
dude,
starring in it. And
it
I was
is
like,
phenomenal,
I
man.
don't know what's going on here, but this looks like really
So
funny.
I will just say, Josh, what before next week, so
You're gonna
next
have to
week's
fill
episode,
me and the audience
yes.
in.
So next week's episode, we'll get your reaction. You watch the trailer. Also, it comes out on Friday. So if you want to get a Daily Wire subscription for a couple days and you know and watch it, that'd be sweet. We can get your take on it because I think Rebecca and I are going to watch it. But so David Cohn is in it. The Crane and Company boys are in it. Brett Cooper's in it. I'm trying to think who else is in it. The Knowles is in it. Ted Cruz is in it. It's just weird to think that Ted Cruz is in it. Basically the premise, Josh, is they're talking about men in female sports, and they basically just made this comedy bit show or movie based on it. And you see dudes like basically playing basketball. So David Cohn and all of them are like in a basketball team dunking on women, and you have Blaine Crane choke slamming a girl in a wrestling match and then throwing an elbow. Then you have this guy named, like, I forget what his name, Eric or something like that. I don't remember what it is, some Spanish name. And he basically, they said, listen, now it's age appropriate. Now we can judge you can't judge my age. I can be 6 or whatever. And he plays T-ball and he nails this girl in the head with a baseball because he hits it really hard and it knocks her over. This is all in the trailer, by the way. And there's another one where there's a scene that's really funny where they're like playing basketball or whatever, and then they're like in a huddle or something like that, and they're like, you mean we could play any sport we could play? And then Felix, that's the guy's name, goes soccer, and then Jake goes, no, I said real sports. And so it looks phenomenal. And they've played some people, like some of their characters are basically like making fun of who they are as a person. So I think it's what's the guy with the beard? I don't remember the guy's name with the beard. He's the white guy with the beard. Anyways, he plays like a
At the Daily
super.
Wire,
Yeah, yeah.
Jeremy.
No, I forget. No, it's one of the commentators. But anyways, he plays like a character that's complete opposite of him, and he said it was very uncomfortable playing him. But there's just so many cool things. And I just think it's very funny. And I think it's gonna be great. And we need this. Like, right, Josh? I think you agree with me. Something that crazy and stupid of men playing in women's sports can be made fun of because it is so outlandish. It is so crazy to think about.
Yeah. Man, yeah. The other funny thing about that too is like Daily Wire being like a news organization. Imagine if ESPN made a movie starring like their top personalities like Stephen A. Smith and
It would be
like
an
Mad
awful movie.
Dog and Trey Wingo, and or if like CNN made a
Oh
movie
God.
starring like Wolf,
Oh,
whatever the
this
heck his
is
name is,
awful.
and Don Lemon, and just be
Goodness.
crazy.
But it is. I mean, David Cohn, like he seemed like his character looks hilarious. Like he's like a mountain man that turns into a female for a basketball game, right? So yeah, it looks great. I can't wait to watch it. But we'll let Josh give us his take next week as he watches the trailer and gives us our take on it. But anyways, Josh, call that a show, right, my man? Call that a show
Good
for the week.
show. Yeah.
It's been a good show. We hope you enjoyed it. Go watch some college football this weekend because it's going to be a heck of a week. And Ohio State will be making the playoff. You heard it here first. And next week, if they don't, I didn't say anything. I'll edit this out. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. And if you've loved the episode on YouTube, go ahead and click that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Let us know that you love what we're doing. If you listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you share it with friends and family. Maybe your dad wants to listen to us two jokers talk about Ohio State football and college football and the Browns, not the Bengals, because who cares about them anymore, and so on. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching and listening. And until next time, we'll see ya.